So SquidUp has at least 30 different criteria that need to be satisfied to achieve a compliant event. And you go, oh, big deal. But you need to understand that, particularly in the field, some of these can be predicted and some of these can be controlled, but there's a fair chunk of them that us new mortals have absolutely no control over at all. One of the things that trying to set the criteria, the advisory committee, which I have to acknowledge here, it wasn't just me. There was a group of us that sat down and started with the Auckland Protocol to work through a series of these different bits and pieces, and learn from Auckland and learn from Washington and international protocol. There are quite a few things that we argued about and eventually settled on. And as Alan mentioned, we also had quite a few letters and items of feedback from the public consultation process that fed into the SquidUp that you see today. So, and as Alan said, he introduced the two different pathways. The QAPP is, I guess it seems like something fairly simple, but I'd encourage you, whilst the tables, Table 3 and Table 1, give you a good summary, you really do need to read through the whole document, because there's plenty of explanation there, expanding on some of those criteria that are summarised down to just a few items. So the QAPP will be the first item if you're going through the field testing process, the pathway. That will be the first item that's submitted to the Independent Evaluation Panel, the IEP, for assessment. With that QAPP, that project plan, the aim is to identify the site. It's to check that the site is representative of where the devices are to be used in the future. The third thing is to make sure that the organisational chart is clear and independence is maintained at key points. So your sample collection, your analysis, and your reporting. The fourth thing is to check that the experimental design is going to give the information that SquidUp's asking for. So it's giving you answers to the right questions. And that's been part of the challenge to get where we've got, is we want to know that the answers are to the questions we're asking. And the fifth and final thing is to minimise the chance that you might do all this testing, as Al said, get 2 to 3 years down the track, have spent all this money, submit your reports, and have the Independent Evaluation Panel reject the claims. So that's the last thing we wanted. So we'll dig into a few more of these details, but as I say, I'd encourage you to read the protocol from start to finish, and I'm sure there'll still be questions that will come from there. So we're still open to questions. I'm happy to provide feedback. And the Independent Evaluation Panel is probably where most of the decisions will be made now. So I think I've lost my place here. Okay, so in summary from Table 3, it does, and SquidUp does talk about upper and lower limits on your influent concentration. And we'll go through that in a bit more detail in a couple of slides. The SquidUp of the protocol in its current form looks at field monitoring. It doesn't look at lab testing. Doesn't mean that we don't believe there's value in lab testing. There certainly is. It's just that, as Alan said, the feedback from most of the councils and most of the authorities was field testing was the priority. So that's why it's been... Is my microphone playing up?
Just a little scratchy. I thought maybe it was from banging on your shirt collar.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm gesticulating too much. So the protocol has set up primarily to address field testing, but as we say, we are looking to include lab testing, and hopefully that'll happen with the next review. There are upper and lower criteria for the influent concentrations, and the main reason for that is the large concentrations coming in can potentially unduly influence the metrics. So we'll look at that in future slides. The document also provides some indicative guidance on where to put your flow meters and sample intakes and those sorts of things. It might seem like simple things, but small changes with these setups can have a very significant outcome if they aren't done right at the beginning. So we want to try and guide as much as we can without being too prescriptive. It also talks about the pollutant analyses that are required and how to report the results. So we'll look at that in next slides. So reinforce again, the laboratory testing is not in it at the moment, but we would like to see it come in with wider industry involvement, and particularly the lab guys from UNSW and Swinburne and Monash and those that do this day to day. We'd like to see their input as the technical review panel expression of interest will come out soon. Baseline monitoring has been noted as optional. And monitoring is expensive, let's be honest. And full baseline monitoring to discover that a site doesn't comply with an arbitrary set of concentration criteria, in my view, is not a good, efficient way to use your money. However, I would still recommend that you take a few grab samples before setting up an expensive station, just to confirm that you're going to get results that are in the right ballpark. And what do I mean by that? Well, for example, if your device is designed to treat a shopping centre car park, and you propose to test an agricultural or a farm catchment, it might be worthwhile doing some initial sampling to make sure your water quality is in the right ballpark there. SCWDEP doesn't tell you specifically what equipment to use. Any brand is suitable as long as it achieves the requirements of SCWDEP, and every site's different. So I've installed a couple of sites where the samplers have had to draw water a distance of 25 to 30 metres, which limited us to one supplier for auto samplers because the other samplers couldn't draw past 10 metres. So other sites have needed a specific flow meter that recorded from a certain perspective. So if SCWDEP went to the level of prescribing the equipment that was necessary, I think it would just add another level of compliance that doesn't really add a lot of value to the outcome. The protocol doesn't provide specific parameters for nutrient speciation or particulate versus dissolved fractions, and we'll discuss that in a lot more detail soon. It also doesn't set a minimum performance benchmark, so it doesn't say devices have to achieve 80% TSS, 60% TP and 45% TN. So TS, total suspended solids, total phosphorus, total nitrogen reduction. The reason for this is that with music, and presumably there'll be additional options for pollutant export modelling in the future, they were all set up to be concept tools that allowed designers to model treatment trains in a variety of different formats. And just like a train, we're not just modelling the locomotive or the caboose at the end. There needs to be the ability to choose a variety of different options to achieve those objectives. And some of those options might be cheaper, lower efficiency pre-treatment measures that might contribute to the reduction of biofilter or a constructed wetland, or filtration options. So allowing for reduced claims keeps the market open to smaller, cheaper, lower efficiency tools, as well as the high efficiency, higher cost options. The protocol also doesn't instruct claimants or the independent evaluation panel on how to interpret the results, and we'll see why in future slides.